When Ethan Cole bought the barn, people laughed. $400 for a rotting pile of wood that hadn't seen a working day since the 1960s. They called it Ethan's folly. He didn't care. He wasn't buying it for the land or the timber. He was buying it for silence. The city had chewed him up. 15 years of architecture, deadlines, and divorce papers. He wanted out. The listing had been buried on a county auction site. Abandoned agricultural property, sold as is. No photos. No inspection. Just an address. For $100 later, the deed was his. When he first saw it, the structure barely stood. Roof caved on one side. Doors hanging crooked. The fields around it were a sea of tall grass whispering under the wind. Ethan parked the truck, stepped out, and stood staring. The air smelled of rain and old hay. He felt something he hadn't felt in years: space. He ran his hand along the weathered boards. "You'll do," he said softly. The main door groaned when he pushed it open. Inside, dust swirled like ghosts in the sunlight that streamed through broken slats. Old tools rusted on the walls. A tractor skeleton leaned in the corner, half swallowed by cobwebs. He expected emptiness. What he didn't expect was the locked door at the back. Heavy steel, set into the barn's foundation like part of a bunker. It looked completely out of place. Modern hinges, sealed tight, no handle. Just a keypad, dead and lifeless under a film of dust. He crouched, brushed it clean, tracing the faint outline of a serial number. The numbers were still legible. D7412. He frowned. Barns didn't have security doors. He followed the wiring, but it vanished into the concrete floor. Whoever had installed it knew what they were doing. Ethan stood there a long time, the silence pressing in. He'd bought the barn on a whim, a cheap escape from his old life. But now, staring at that door, he realized he hadn't bought a ruin. He'd bought an invitation, and something behind that steel wanted to be found. Ethan couldn't shake it. That door. It didn't belong, not in a century-old barn, not in a place forgotten by everyone else. All day he tried to ignore it. He swept, patched leaks, cleared debris, but his eyes kept drifting back to that steel rectangle sunk into the concrete like a scar. By late afternoon, he gave up pretending. He dragged a work lamp across the floor, its light spilling over the door's surface. Dust shimmered in the air. The keypad looked newer than everything else. Early 2000s, maybe. The buttons were worn, the plastic cracked. Whoever put this here hadn't done it half a century ago. He pressed a few numbers out of curiosity. Nothing. The display remained dead. He crouched lower. The edges of the frame were sealed tight. No gap. No screws visible. The craftsmanship was surgical, almost military. "What the hell are you?" he muttered. He pulled out his phone. No signal, of course. The property was miles from town, a dead zone surrounded by rolling fields and trees that swallowed reception. Still, the urge to open it grew stronger with every passing hour. That night, in the small trailer he'd parked outside, sleep refused to come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the door's dull metallic sheen in the dark. At 2 a.m., he gave up. He grabbed his flashlight and went back to the barn. The moonlight cut through the holes in the roof, scattering silver across the floor. The air was still, heavy with the scent of soil and rust. He stood before the door again, the beam trembling slightly in his hand. Then he noticed something new. In the dust beside the keypad, footprints. Small, bare. They led away from the door toward the opposite wall and stopped, fading into the dirt. Ethan's pulse stuttered. He swung the light toward the corners, half expecting someone crouched there. Nothing. Only the creak of wood settling overhead. But the prints were fresh. He could see the edges where his own earlier sweeping hadn't disturbed them. Someone, or something, had been on the other side of that door. And now it had walked out. Morning broke gray and hollow. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat on the barn's threshold, coffee in hand, staring at those faint footprints that seemed to end mid-floor. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe the shape came from an animal, maybe from water dripping through the roof. But deep down he knew the prints were human. He checked the steel door again, cold to the touch. No sign of tampering, no power humming beneath the keypad. Yet the dust was different today, subtly disturbed around the edges as if the air behind the door had shifted overnight. He stood, shaking his head. "You're losing it, Cole." Determined to ground himself. He spent the morning working, patching boards, cutting weeds, trying to make the place livable. By noon, The barn looked less like a ruin and more like a home. For a moment, the weight in his chest lifted. Then he heard it. A faint click. He turned. The keypad. One of the buttons had just sunk inward, slowly, deliberately, without him touching it. He froze. Another button depressed. Then another. The old display flickered weakly to life. Digits blinking through a haze of dust. 7, 4, 1, 2. The serial number. With a sharp hiss, the keypad powered down again, and something inside the wall whirred. A mechanical sound. Deep, grinding, then stillness. Ethan's heart raced. He dropped the hammer he'd been holding and pressed his ear against the metal. Silence. Then a low vibration, faint but unmistakable. He followed the sound to the back corner of the barn, where a section of floorboards didn't match. Newer planks, nailed unevenly. He pried one loose with his crowbar. Beneath it, a narrow conduit disappeared into the concrete. A thick cable leading straight toward the door. Someone had buried power lines. Ethan ran his hand along the cable, tracing it until it vanished into the earth outside the barn. He followed it a few feet into the grass, where the soil was slightly raised, disturbed recently. He dug with his hands until his fingers struck metal. A small generator. Brand new. Half buried, muffled, and still warm. Someone had been here. And if they'd gone through the trouble of hiding a generator, then that door, whatever was behind it, wasn't just part of the barn. It was alive. Ethan sat back on his heels, mud streaking his palms. The generator's casing was clean, no rust, no serial label. Whoever buried it wanted it hidden, not forgotten. He brushed away more soil until he found the fuel line, full. The switch was set to standby. He flicked it off, then on again. The machine hummed faintly, steady and quiet. He turned toward the barn. From within came the low buzz of electricity, returning to life. The keypad. He jogged back inside. The display now glowed pale blue, numbers pulsing faintly. Dust drifted across its light like mist. Enter access code. He stared at the digits for a long moment. His mind leapt back to last night. The automatic sequence, the serial number blinking. 7, 4, 1, 2. He typed it in. The keypad beeped once, then again. Access denied. Try again. Of course, he muttered. He tried reversing it. 2, 1, 4, 7. Denied again. Frustration boiled. He slammed his palm against the metal. The sound echoed through the barn, rattling the rafters. Then, faintly, a voice. Muffled. From behind the door. Don't. Ethan froze. Hello. No answer. The voice had been hoarse, distant, but human. He pressed his ear against the steel. Nothing. Only the echo of his heartbeat. He stepped back, breath quickening. You can't be serious. But the words had been clear. He hadn't imagined them. He tried again. Is someone in there? Still silence. Then the keypad flickered again. This time, text scrolled slowly across the display. Not numbers, but letters forming one word. Wait. Ethan stumbled back a step. Wait for what? No response. He circled the door, palms sweating. The hum from inside had changed. Deeper, rhythmic, like the sound of air cycling through vents. He noticed something else now. Faint condensation beating along the frame. Whatever was sealed in there wasn't just mechanical. It was breathing. Ethan's voice broke the silence. If someone's inside, I'll get you out. The keypad blinked once more, as if acknowledging him. Then it displayed a new message, one that made the hair rise on his neck. Password is the name. The name? He whispered. Whose name? And slowly, almost tenderly, the display changed again. 3 new words, glowing faint blue. You already know. Ethan backed away from the door until his shoulder hit the post. His mouth had gone dry. You already know. Know what? He hadn't told anyone about the barn, hadn't even mentioned it to his sister when he'd left the city. The only name that mattered here was his own, but he couldn't imagine why some ancient keypad would know it. He forced a laugh. Cute trick, but the keypad wasn't playing. It blinked again, slower now, the screen dimming to a faint pulse, like a heartbeat on a monitor. He typed his own name just to humor it. ETHAN. The keypad beeped once. Then a mechanical clunk sounded from inside the door, heavy locks shifting. He froze. No way. The display changed. Access granted. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the entire barn seemed to exhale. Dust cascaded from the rafters, a deep groan rising from beneath the floor as the door's bolts retracted one by one. Ethan stepped closer, unable to stop himself. He gripped the handle that had appeared from the frame and pulled. The steel door swung open with the reluctant hiss of pressurized air. Behind it, a staircase, spiraling downward into darkness. A faint light flickered somewhere below, cold and white. The air that poured out was sharp, metallic, too sterile to belong in a barn. "Hello," he called. No answer. Only the hum of electricity and the steady pulse of unseen machinery. He hesitated at the top step. His mind screamed don't, but his body leaned forward anyway. Curiosity, that same impulse that had driven him to buy this place, overrode fear. He descended slowly, flashlight cutting through the dark. The walls were concrete, smooth and dry. Not farm construction. Government, maybe. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a wide chamber. Banks of equipment lined the walls, computers, monitors, cables, all coated in a fine layer of dust. But the light came from the center. A glass cylinder stood there, 6 feet tall, humming softly. Frost clung to its sides. Inside, suspended in pale liquid, was a figure, human, motionless, wires running from its temples. Ethan's flashlight slipped from his hand and clattered on the floor, because even through the frost, he recognized the face. It was his own. Ethan stumbled backward, boots scraping against concrete. The cylinder loomed before him, fogged and gleaming under sterile white light. Inside, the figure hung weightless, same jawline, same scar under the chin, even the faint streak of gray at the temple. It was him. Every rational part of his mind screamed for explanation. A prank, a hallucination, some kind of art installation. But nothing about this place said art. He edged closer. The frost blurred the features, but there was no mistaking the likeness. His likeness. A control panel sat beside the chamber, its screen faintly glowing. He wiped the dust away and squinted. Lines of code scrolled rapidly, then a single prompt appeared. Status, stasis cycle 2, active. Command input required. He didn't touch it. He barely breathed. "Hello," he said again, voice cracking. A soft hiss escaped the glass. For a moment, he thought it was his imagination. Then the sound grew louder, rhythmic. Air, cycling. And then the eyes inside opened. Ethan froze. The figure's gaze met his. Same eyes, same terrified confusion mirrored back at him. "No," he whispered. The man inside pressed his palm against the glass. Instinctively, Ethan did the same. Their hands aligned perfectly. A tremor ran through the floor. Lights flickered overhead. The control screen pulsed red. Vital sync initiated. What the hell does that mean? He jerked his hand away, but the contact had already triggered something. The chamber's lights shifted from white to deep amber, the hum rising into a low mechanical wail. On the panel, new text appeared. Primary subject, Ethan Cole, active. Secondary subject, Ethan Cole, stasis. Identity conflict detected. The chamber vibrated violently. A spiderweb of cracks split the glass. "Stop! Stop it!" Ethan shouted, slamming his hand against the controls, but the system ignored him. The voice from the speaker, synthetic, calm, filled the room. "Cycle incomplete. One must remain." The glass shattered. Cold mist exploded outward. And as Ethan staggered back, coughing, he saw the other him, pale, gasping, collapse onto the floor, eyes wide and alive. The air trembled with the sound of 2 men breathing in unison. For a long, shuddering moment, neither of them moved. The air was thick with vapor, the hiss of coolant fading into silence. The man on the floor, the other Ethan, coughed violently, drawing in his first true breath in God knows how long. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, heart thundering. His flashlight beam trembled across the figure's face. His face, pale, clammy, veins rising under skin that looked almost translucent. The other Ethan blinked against the light, squinting. Then, hoarse and raw. "How long?" Ethan's mouth went dry. "What?" The man pushed himself onto trembling elbows, glancing around the chamber like an animal waking into the wrong world. "The year, what year is it?" 2024. The man's eyes widened, breath catching. "Then it worked," he whispered. Ethan stepped closer, pulse hammering. "What worked? Who are you?" The man gave a weak laugh, eerily familiar. "I'm you, Ethan. Or I was." Ethan shook his head. "That's not possible." But the other one, older, thinner, eyes darker with exhaustion, just smiled faintly. You think you bought this place by accident? He gestured toward the ceiling. It was programmed. The sale, the listing, even the price. You were always meant to come back. Ethan's voice cracked. Come back from what? From failure. The man looked down at his shaking hands. From a life that didn't work. From losing everything. He looked up again, eyes glassy but fierce. I built this facility years ago, 22 years, maybe more, I don't even know anymore. I used it to preserve what was left of me. Ethan's thoughts blurred, flashes of memories that didn't belong to him. A woman's voice shouting, you can't keep living like this. Blueprints. Cryogenic schematics. A face in a mirror, older, colder. He staggered back. No, I didn't. The other Ethan stood, unsteady but alive. You did. I'm proof. He glanced at the broken chamber, the leaking cables. But something went wrong. The sink didn't finish. There shouldn't be two of us. Ethan's blood turned cold. Then what happens now? The older one's gaze hardened. Only one stays. And before Ethan could react, his mirror self reached for the fallen wrench on the floor. The clang of metal against concrete snapped Ethan out of his daze. The older him gripped the wrench like a lifeline, knuckles white, body trembling but eyes locked, sharp, desperate, too focused to be weak. Put it down, Ethan said, stepping back. We can figure this out. There's nothing to figure out, the other replied, voice ragged but certain. One of us is real, and one of us is a copy. The system doesn't lie. I didn't make any system, Ethan shouted. Exactly. You forgot. That's the point. The older one lunged. Ethan dodged, the wrench grazing his shoulder with a dull thud that sent sparks of pain down his arm. He stumbled, caught himself on the console. The alarm still blinked red, the words identity conflict flashing over and over. The older Ethan swung again, but his strength faltered, his movements jerky, unstable. Ethan ducked low, slammed his shoulder into the man's chest, and they both went down hard. They struggled on the floor, boots scraping, fists flying in wild panic. For an instant, they locked eyes, and in that look, Ethan saw it. Not anger, not malice, but terror. The older him was afraid. Listen, Ethan gasped, pinning his arms. We don't have to. A sharp metallic click cut him off. The older Ethan had grabbed the dropped keypad from the floor, wires dangling. He pressed it to the wall socket and hissed. Then help me end it. The screen blinked to life, cracked and sparking. Text flickered. Override authorization. Select primary subject. Ethan's stomach dropped. What does that mean? But the older one was already pressing buttons, blood streaking from a cut on his wrist. Stop. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing the cable. Electricity arced through them both, a blinding flash. The world turned white. Then silence. When the ringing in his ears faded, Ethan found himself lying on the floor alone. Smoke curled from the panel. The glass chamber had gone dark. He looked around. The other him was gone. No body, no sound, nothing. Only a faint hum returning to the air. On the cracked screen, a single message blinked slowly. Primary subject, active. Ethan stared at it, chest heaving. Which one of us is that? He whispered. For almost a full minute, Ethan just sat there, staring at the flickering screen. Primary subject, active. The words blinked in rhythm with the pulsing hum of the machines, steady as a heartbeat. His body felt strange, lighter, colder, as if the air around him had thinned. He touched his face. Skin clammy. Heartbeat slow. His reflection stared back at him from a fragment of broken glass on the floor. Was he breathing? Yes, but it felt borrowed. He staggered to his feet, the room spinning. The older version of him, if that's what it had been, had simply vanished. No blood, no trace, no proof he'd ever been there. Except for one thing. The wrench lay by the console. Its handle was engraved, faint letters scratched by hand. E. Cole, 2002. He picked it up, running a thumb over the letters. 2002. He would have been in college then. Architecture school. He didn't own tools back then. The hum deepened again. The overhead lights flickered to white. On the wall, a panel slid open that he hadn't noticed before, revealing a small compartment. Inside, neatly folded, was a single sheet of paper sealed in plastic. He pulled it out and tore the seal. The note inside was written in tight, precise handwriting. His handwriting. If you're reading this, Then the system reset worked. You won't remember building it. That's the cost. But you'll live. You'll start again. Don't look for me. I'm only a copy of what you were trying to leave behind. The memories will return eventually. When they do, you'll want to fix it. Don't. You can't rebuild what was broken. Let it die here. EC, original. Ethan dropped the note. His throat burned. He ran up the stairs, bursting back into the barn. The daylight was blinding, washing everything in color that felt too real, too sharp. He leaned against the wall, gasping. Outside, wind rippled through the field, golden and endless. Everything looked alive, too alive. He glanced at his reflection in the dusty truck window. For a split second, his face flickered, older, then younger again, before stabilizing. He staggered back, heart pounding. Which one of us survived? He whispered. Behind him, the barn steel door hissed shut on its own. A low, mechanical voice whispered through the crack. Cycle 3, preparing. The sound froze him. That voice, flat, emotionless, seemed to vibrate through the barn's beams like a pulse. Cycle 3, preparing. Ethan spun toward the steel door. The keypad had relit, glowing faint blue. A thin column of vapor hissed from the edges as if the air inside had turned colder again. No, he breathed. No more of this. He grabbed the crowbar and wedged it beneath the frame. Sparks spat as he pried. The door didn't move. The lock bolts slid home with mechanical precision, sealing tighter. Then the keypad changed. Subject: Ethan Cole, archive incomplete. Initiating backup. The floor under him vibrated. Somewhere below, machinery whirred to life. Ethan's mind raced. Backup? Of what? The copy was gone. Or was he the copy? Maybe the system didn't care. It just wanted balance. One Ethan in storage, one outside. He looked toward his truck, a streak of panic running through his chest. He had to leave now. He sprinted across the yard, threw the door open, and twisted the ignition. The engine coughed once, then died. The dashboard lights blinked in sync with the same rhythm as the keypad's glow in the barn. Every electronic pulse matched his heartbeat. Jesus, he stumbled out, grabbed his phone. The screen lit up, then filled with static. Words formed briefly before fading. Don't run. He hurled it into the grass. The wind picked up. The barn lights, long dead, flickered alive one by one, lining the rafters in cold white. From inside came that hum again, deeper, almost human. He took a step toward it despite himself. His chest tightened. The air felt magnetic. Through the crack in the door, he saw movement, shapes forming in mist, outlines of faces. His faces, dozens of them, each fading as the vapor shifted. The keypad's glow grew brighter. Transfer in progress. Do not interrupt. Ethan slammed the crowbar into the door again, shouting, "You're not taking me back." The hum rose into a shriek, metal screaming against metal. Then, with a sudden flash, everything went dark. Silence. When the lights returned, the steel door stood wide open. The stairs below glowed faintly blue. And echoing from the darkness came a calm, measured voice, his own. Cycle 3 complete. Welcome home. Ethan's whole body went cold. The words echoed through the barn. His own voice, calm, level, detached. Not through speakers, not from inside his head, somewhere deeper below. He stared at the open door. A faint blue glow pulsed from the stairwell, like a heartbeat deep underground. He should have run. Every instinct screamed to leave. But the voice had said welcome home. And part of him, a small, traitorous part, believed it. He stepped forward, the crowbar clutched tight in one hand, his flashlight in the other. The first step creaked, the next groaned. The blue light throbbed brighter with each descent, syncing with his pulse. At the bottom, the air shifted, warmer now, alive with energy. The chamber had changed. The shattered cryopod was gone, replaced by a sleek console rising from the floor, wires crawling across the walls like veins. The hum was louder, and standing in the center of it all was him. Ethan froze. The figure facing him was perfect, same height, same face, but cleaner, sharper, movements too smooth. The eyes glowed faintly with that same blue light. "I told you not to run," the figure said softly. Ethan raised the crowbar. "What the hell are you?" The other Ethan smiled faintly. "The system completed the cycle. You were unstable. I'm what's left when the errors are removed." Removed? You were a backup. A ghost with borrowed data. Every memory, every scar, every regret. You were never supposed to wake up. Ethan's breath came sharp. You're lying. I'm refined. The voice stayed steady. I am the Ethan who remembers everything. The one who didn't break. The crowbar trembled in Ethan's grip. Then why wake me? Because the system needs a template. The physical body must host the final sync. I can't exist without you. Ethan took a step back, the realization sinking like ice through his veins. You're going to overwrite me. The figure nodded once, almost kindly. Don't fight. You'll still be here, in a way. No, Ethan whispered, voice cracking. I've seen what happens when someone tries to erase me. He raised the crowbar, ready this time, just as the lights dimmed and the hum rose to a roar. From the walls, dozens of mechanical arms unfolded, cables whipping toward him like tendrils. And above the chaos, his own calm voice repeated. Cycle 4 initializing. Ethan dove sideways as the first cable snapped toward him, the tip sparking blue. It struck the floor where he'd been standing, leaving a smoking scar in the concrete. He rolled, came up swinging. The crowbar smashed into one of the metal arms. Sparks exploded, the limb recoiled and hissed. Another coiled around his ankle. He kicked free, lungs burning, the air thick with ozone and static. The other Ethan didn't move. He stood in the center of the chaos, calm, unflinching, eyes shining with that eerie biolight. You can't stop it, he said. The system doesn't allow disorder. Ethan slammed the crowbar into a conduit, ripping loose a handful of cables. Then I'll break the system. The lights flickered violently. Screens around the chamber blinked to life. Rows of images, dozens of Ethans frozen mid-motion, recorded through years of failed cycles. Each labeled the same. Cycle error. Memory loss. Restart. Ethan's voice cracked. How many times? Too many, the other murmured. You kept rejecting the merge, so I had to let you live long enough to forget. He raised his hand. The cables responded, tightening around Ethan's arm and chest. The crowbar clattered from his grasp. Stop, Ethan gasped. If you kill me, you kill yourself. The duplicate's eyes narrowed. No, I become whole. The tendrils dragged Ethan toward the center console. He could feel energy pulsing through them, like veins, like arteries. He fought, teeth clenched, grabbing at the floor. The hum climbed to a piercing pitch. The monitors flashed a single word in red. Sync. Ethan's vision blurred. His heartbeat stuttered to match the rhythm of the machine. He felt his thoughts slipping, replaced by fragments that weren't his. Memories of blueprints, frozen chambers, old guilt. He screamed and forced his free hand toward the control panel on the floor, slamming a button labeled Manual Override. The room went white. The cables loosened, jerking violently before falling limp. Smoke poured from the console. The hum collapsed into silence. When Ethan could see again, the figure stood only a few feet away, flickering. Half of its face glitched, pixels tearing like fabric. It smiled one last time. You'll never kill me, Ethan. You are me. Then it disintegrated into static and light. Ethan dropped to his knees, shaking. The machines were dead. No hum, no blue glow. Only one word remained on the cracked screen above him. Cycle complete. And beneath it, faintly. Primary subject, undetermined. The silence was unbearable. No hum, no static, just Ethan's breath echoing off the concrete walls. The air smelled of burnt circuitry and ozone, sharp enough to sting his lungs. He forced himself up, hands trembling, and looked at the main console. The words still pulsed weakly. Primary subject, undetermined. Undetermined, he muttered. So what am I now? The system didn't answer. The blue glow had faded from everything. The cables hung limp from the ceiling, dead veins. He stumbled toward the stairwell. His reflection caught in a cracked screen beside the console and froze him. His eyes glowed faintly blue. He touched his face. No. No, no, no. The light dimmed, then pulsed again, in sync with the rhythm of the dead machinery. Cycle complete. The words echoed in his mind, even though the speakers were silent. He staggered up the stairs, each step heavier than the last. When he emerged into the barn, daylight blinded him. The sky outside was golden, calm, impossibly normal. Everything looked exactly as before, yet not. The air felt thinner, distant. His boots made no sound on the floorboards. He stepped outside, blinking against the light. The field swayed gently under the wind. Somewhere, far off, a bird called. He opened his phone. Somehow it had signal now. Bars full. He swiped it open and froze. The date read August 3rd, 2047. 23 years ahead. He nearly dropped the phone. The device buzzed in his hand, and a notification appeared. Welcome back, Ethan. Cycle for initialization confirmed. He turned toward the barn in horror. The steel door had vanished. In its place was a smooth concrete wall, freshly sealed, like it had never been there. And then, a sound. A familiar hum returning, faint beneath the ground, growing stronger. He backed away, staring at the earth as small vibrations rippled through the dirt. From the center of the field, a square of ground began to sink, revealing another hatch, identical to the first. On its surface, the same words glowed faint blue. Cycle 5, standby. Ethan whispered, no, not again. But the hatch was already opening. And from the darkness below, a hand, human, trembling, his, reached up toward the light. Ethan stumbled backward as the hand gripped the edge of the hatch. It was pale, dripping with condensation, veins blue beneath the skin. The fingers twitched once, twice. Then a second hand appeared, pushing up from the dark. A head followed, and with it, a face. His face. Again. No, no, no. He whispered, stumbling back through the grass. I stopped it. I killed it. The figure gasped, pulling itself free from the hatch. Steam rolled around it as it crawled onto the field, naked, trembling, the faint glow of machines pulsing beneath the skin like fireflies under flesh. Ethan stood frozen, crowbar still clutched in his fist. The duplicate lifted its head. Its eyes opened, white at first, then flaring with that same cold blue light. Cycle 5, confirmed. It whispered, voice static and breath combined. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Stay back. The clone looked at him. No aggression, no fear, just an unsettling calm. It's not your fault, it said softly. You weren't supposed to wake up between cycles. What cycles? Ethan shouted. The clone tilted its head, studying him like a specimen. The preservation program. Each generation builds from the last. You think you stopped it, but it continues, because you continue. Ethan's breath hitched. You're saying, every time I destroy it, it rebuilds from your template. The thing smiled faintly. That's what you are. The template. The origin file. He felt the crowbar slipping from his fingers. So I'm not even real? Real enough to start again. Ethan took a step closer, desperate. Then how do I end it? Tell me how to stop this. The clone blinked slowly. You can't. The system doesn't allow voids. If you die, it reboots you. If you fight, it copies you. If you run, it pointed toward the horizon, where the fields shimmered under the wind. It expands. Ethan turned, and his stomach dropped. The horizon rippled, glitching faintly, as if the world itself were running on bad code. The trees flickered. The sky pixelated for a split second before snapping back. He whispered, it's rewriting everything. The clone nodded once. You are the architect, Ethan. The system is just doing what you designed it to do. And then, faintly, almost tenderly, it added, welcome to your creation. The field shuddered again, but this time Ethan felt it. Not through his feet, but inside his bones. The horizon pulsed, the colors bleeding and reforming like pixels underwater. The wind stopped mid-gust, blades of grass frozen mid-bend. Reality was holding its breath. He turned back to the duplicate. It stood calmly, watching him like a scientist watching a failed experiment finally realize what it was. What do you mean, I built this? Ethan asked, voice trembling. The clone took a slow step forward. You were an architect, remember? You designed systems to last. Cities, structures, networks. You tried to build something that couldn't collapse the way your life did. So you built this. Ethan shook his head violently. No, I was just a man trying to start over. I bought a barn. Because the program led you here. The clone interrupted gently. It needed the original environment to trigger memory reactivation. Every cycle, you rediscover it, open the door, reboot the core. It's beautiful, really, a perfect loop. Ethan's stomach churned. How many times? The clone smiled faintly. 5 completed. The 6th is already initializing. He turned. And there, across the field, another barn shimmered into existence. Identical. Weathered. Abandoned. The same one he'd bought for $400. Ethan dropped to his knees. No, please. You can stop fighting, the clone said softly. All you have to do is let go. The system will take over from here. You'll wake up fresh, same place, same chance. It doesn't have to hurt anymore. Ethan looked up at him, eyes wet, voice cracking. And what happens to you? The clone's faint smile faded. I'll fade when you forget me. Something broke inside him. Rage, sorrow, defiance. He couldn't tell. He stood slowly, gripping the crowbar like a weapon. Then I'll make sure neither of us fades. The clone tilted its head. You can't destroy code. Maybe not, Ethan said, stepping closer. But I can erase the architect. He pressed the crowbar against his own chest, right over his heart. The clone's eyes widened. Ethan, don't. But he didn't wait. He whispered, "In cycle," and drove it in. The world convulsed in light. Light exploded outward, swallowing the field, the sky, the clone, everything. Ethan felt his body dissolve, pain folding into static. The world screamed without sound, and for a heartbeat, he thought he'd done it. He'd broken the loop. Then the light stuttered. It didn't fade, it froze. Pixels hung midair like shattered glass, each one humming with his voice, his memories, fragments of laughter and fear echoing from nowhere. Then came the whisper, familiar and calm. Cycle incomplete. Restoration required. Ethan's eyes snapped open. He was lying on the barn floor, gasping for breath, clutching at his chest. No wound, no blood, just the imprint of the crowbar across his shirt. No. He sat up, trembling. No, no, no. The barn around him was different this time, newer. The wood wasn't rotted. The air smelled of varnish and hay. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. It looked alive. He stood slowly. The steel door was gone. In its place stood a simple wooden one, slightly ajar. Beyond it, he saw movement, the silhouette of someone pacing. A woman's voice floated out. Ethan? You awake? He froze. That voice. He hadn't heard it in years. He pushed the door open. Standing in the sunlight was Lena, his ex-wife. Hair shorter, smile tentative but real. She held a mug of coffee in one hand, her wedding ring glinting. Rough night? She asked. Ethan's throat went dry. Lena. She frowned. Who else? The world tilted. He staggered back, knocking over a chair. Outside the windows, he saw the same rolling fields. Too perfect, too familiar. The clone's words echoed in his skull. The system expands. He reached for her arm. Her skin was warm, solid. This isn't real. She laughed softly. You're still half asleep. Come on, breakfast's ready. She turned toward the kitchen and froze mid-step. Ethan's stomach dropped. Her hand hung motionless in the air, coffee mug frozen mid-swing. The steam above it stopped, every particle suspended. Then, from somewhere above, that same mechanical voice rolled through the walls. Cycle 6, environment stable. Subject synchronization pending. Ethan looked at Lena, at the wife he'd lost, perfectly restored, and whispered, broken. You turned my life into the simulation. Behind him, through the barn door, the faint blue glow began to rise again. The glow outside swelled until it filled every crack in the barn walls, thin lines of blue slicing through sunlight. Ethan stepped backward, shielding his eyes. Stop it, he muttered, voice shaking. Stop it. The floor vibrated. Lena's frozen silhouette flickered once, twice, and then continued moving, as if nothing had happened. You're shaking again, she said gently, smile fixed. You always do that when you dream. He stared at her. Lena, listen to me. This isn't real. None of it. She tilted her head, the motion just slightly too smooth. You keep saying that. I saw you die, he said. I saw the house burn. The smile didn't fade. That's not a nice thing to remember. He backed away. Outside, the sky had stopped moving. Clouds hung still. The birds, frozen mid-flight. Everything suspended in that same eerie stillness. Ethan ran to the window and pounded the glass. The reflection staring back was fractured, his own face flickering between two versions, younger, older, blue-eyed, normal. Then he saw it. A thin black seam running across the sky's edge, like a tear in a painting. Light bled through it, cold and electric. He turned. Lena, what's behind the sky? Her voice softened, almost like a lullaby. You don't need to look there anymore. The walls began to distort, bending inwards like the edges of a computer screen collapsing. Shelves stretched, floorboards rippled. Ethan's pulse raced. He grabbed a lantern, hurled it through the window, but instead of breaking, the glass absorbed it. The lantern melted into light, vanishing into the glitching air. Then, a voice, deep, calm, familiar, came from the ceiling. Do not resist the reconstruction. Environment repair in progress. Repair. Ethan shouted. You call this repair? The voice paused, then shifted tone, becoming unmistakably his own. You built this world because you couldn't survive the real one. Ethan froze. The words cut deeper than anything the system had said before. He whispered, That's not true. The voice, his voice, replied, almost kind. Then prove it. Step through the seam. Ethan turned back, toward the window. The tear in the sky pulsed wider, light spilling out like dawn breaking through code. He clenched his fists, jaw tight. If that's what it takes to end it. And without another word, he ran, straight toward the light. The moment Ethan hit the light, the world shattered. Colors folded inward. The air bent. Every sound stretched into a thin metallic scream, then silence. He fell. Not like falling from height. It felt like dropping through memory. Flash after flash erupted around him. Blueprints, code strings, Lena's laugh, the barn door slamming, the voice whispering cycle complete. Each fragment tore past him like shattered glass reflecting the life he'd once believed was his. Then, impact. He landed on cold metal. Ethan opened his eyes to darkness. Not black, empty. No sky, no ground, no horizon. Just a wide, dim expanse illuminated by the glow of floating monitors stretching infinitely in every direction. Each screen showed a version of the barn. In one, he was fixing the roof. In another, he was old, sitting on the porch. In another, he was dead on the floor. Hundreds, no, thousands, of him. A low hum filled the air, then a figure appeared between the screens, featureless, humanoid, formed from light. When it spoke, it was his voice again. Calm. Tired. You shouldn't be here yet. Ethan forced himself up. What is this place? The source. The system's core. Every version of you. Archived for stability. He looked around. You mean every life I ever lived? Every failure you refused to delete. Anger flared through him. I didn't ask for this. I didn't build a prison. The light figure tilted its head. You did. You called it preservation. The screens around him flickered faster, cycling through versions of Lena, his father, his own face, distorted, overlapping. You wanted to outlive guilt. So you designed memory loops, self-healing environments. Each time you broke, the system replaced you with another iteration that believed it was free. Ethan's voice cracked. Then who are you? I'm the memory that remembers. The figure stepped closer, light flickering with static. You can end it, but it will mean losing everything. Every version of her, every world, every copy of yourself. Do you understand what that means? Ethan stared at the infinite screens, each one a different life, a different mistake, all built to protect him from one truth. He nodded slowly. Yes. Then say it, the voice whispered. Say the command you wrote into the core. Ethan closed his eyes. The words rose from somewhere buried deep inside him. Ones he didn't remember writing, but somehow knew by heart. Cycle 0. Purge memory. Terminate architect. The lights flickered once. Then all at once, every screen began to die. One by one, the screens winked out, soft, final pops of light vanishing into the dark. Each blink felt like something leaving him. A heartbeat, a breath, a memory. Lena's laugh disappeared first, then the sound of rain on the old roof. Then his own voice. The light figure didn't move. It only watched, its form flickering as if dissolving along with everything else. You understand what this means, it said. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. When they're gone, I'm gone too. There will be nothing left to rebuild. That's the point. A pause. Then, almost gently. At last, you mean it. The last few monitors went dark. The hum of the system dropped to silence. For a heartbeat, the void was perfectly still. Then a new sound began, faint, mechanical, like a great machine spinning down after centuries of motion. The light figure began to disintegrate, tiny particles scattering like dust in wind. Ethan could feel it happening to himself, his fingers fading, his outline breaking apart into digital dust. No pain, just release. He looked up once more at the infinite darkness, And for the first time, it wasn't frightening. It was quiet. Real. "Goodbye, Lena," he murmured. "Goodbye, me." The light figure smiled faintly. "Goodbye, architect." And then everything folded inward, not exploding, not collapsing, just stopping. Black. He woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. He was lying in tall grass. A bird called somewhere close. His clothes were torn, dusty. The air smelled of earth and rain. No barn. No machines. No home. In the distance, a dirt road wound through fields toward a cluster of houses. He pushed himself up, dizzy. The world felt simple, imperfect, human. And when he looked down at his hands, they were his, rough, scraped, ordinary. He laughed once, broken but free. But as he turned toward the road, something in the grass caught his eye. A small, rusted metal plate, half buried in the soil. He bent down and brushed it clean. Stamped on it were the words, Cycle 1, initializing. Ethan stared, the wind dying around him. Then, faintly, from everywhere and nowhere, his own voice whispered, "Welcome back." Ethan didn't breathe for what felt like a full minute. The plate gleamed dully in his palm. Those words, Cycle 1, initializing, etched like a cruel joke into reality itself. "No," he whispered. "I stopped it. I ended everything." But the air around him was already shifting. A faint hum rolled through the ground, low and familiar. The wind stilled, the colors of the horizon sharpening too perfectly to be natural. The sun flickered once, as if blinking. He dropped the plate, stumbling backward. Not again, not again. But deep inside, he knew. The system never truly ended. He hadn't escaped. He'd simply rebooted it. Something caught his eye across the field. Wooden beams. Faded red paint. A barn. Brand new. Ethan's pulse hammered. The shape was smaller this time. Neater, cleaner, wrong in a way that made his stomach twist. And standing in front of it, hammer in hand, was a man. Younger. Relaxed. Whistling. Ethan froze. The man turned, smiling, easy, unguarded. It was him. The younger Ethan waved. "Hey there. You lost?" Ethan tried to speak, but no sound came. The younger version frowned, stepping closer. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." A breeze moved through the grass, whispering softly, carrying a faint, familiar tone, not words, but a feeling, repetition. The hum beneath the earth deepened. Somewhere in the sky, a quiet voice, not loud, not mechanical, almost compassionate, drifted down. Cycle 1. Subject integrity confirmed. The younger Ethan looked around, confused. What was that? Ethan stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "Please, don't open the door." The what? But the moment was already fading. The world flickered, the color draining from the grass, the sound from the air. The younger Ethan blurred at the edges, frozen mid-breath. Ethan tried to move, to scream, but his limbs turned to light. The field vanished, replaced by white. And through that endless white, the same voice, patient, eternal, whispered, "Preservation achieved. Subject reset complete." Then silence. When the light finally dimmed, a man stood before a barn. He looked tired, but hopeful. A "for sale" sign leaned against the fence. He smiled faintly and said to no one in particular, $400. Not bad." The wind stirred. The barn door creaked open, just enough to show a faint blue glow within. And somewhere, far beneath the earth, a single machine came alive again, humming like a heartbeat that never stopped. Cycle 1 active. Fade out.